Minnesota filmmaker and United States Army veteran David Crowley was accused of murdering his wife and daughter before taking his own life in December of 2014. The Apple Valley Police Department suspects the bodies were inside the Minnesota home for 3 weeks after they were found by neighbors on January 17, 2015. Within 24 hours of finding the bodies, authorities assumed this was a double murder-suicide. The culprit was deceased, and the public was not in any danger. Initially, authorities did not see a bullet hole in the living room ceiling or a bullet in the living room carpet. These were two of the most important items in the case, as they were tied to David Crowley and his daughter. It was only after investigators were told of their existence that they returned to the crime scene on two separate occasions and retrieved two spent rounds. What did authorities find in the Crowley house that proved David Crowley murdered his wife and daughter and then killed himself? Without a motive and with the absence of guilt, the case was closed with the status of exceptionally cleared. If David is truly guilty of this crime, then authorities should be forced to prove their theory. The gray stage exists solely because of the official conclusion, as stated on page 92 of the Apple Valley Police Reports PDF. With the conclusion of the review of digital devices, Detective Brian Bone reported on October 7, 2015, there is no other information available for further investigation. Throughout this investigation, the AVPD has not discovered any information or evidence that shows anybody but David is the perpetrator of these crimes, including the killing of his wife, child, and himself. And there you have it. That's what it's all been about. Justice for David Crowley and family. And I will stop sharing now. And say greetings to everybody. Oh, it's been a long time. Minnesota filmmaker and United States.
It's been a long time. And the podcast is set to return most likely in September. So usually I do take the summer to do other things. And so that is why there has not been a new podcast since episode number 40, which was a great episode. Pretty much was 3 episodes anyways here. So you got 3 hours. And but the podcast will return. Episode number 41 will return most likely in September. That is the goal, September, October. So definitely welcome everybody, and please feel free to join me once we get back in there. Hey, Rick, how are you, my friend? I'm just going live here for a couple minutes to just give a quick little update on that, on what I've been up to, and that the podcast will continue. And for now, you can always go and check out Catherine's channel, because Catherine is has dropped at least a few new videos lately. And so if you're looking for your David Crowley questions fix, definitely make sure that you go over to her channel. There's just been a lot of things going on in my life, just personal stuff here. So I have not had the chance to get back into the podcast, but that is definitely my goal. And I've been strongly considering doing a review show on the latest hit piece on David Crowley by the Coffee House Crime channel, I think is what it's called, which is a channel that, I've looked at a lot of this guy's videos, young gentleman, I believe from Australia, I believe. Anyways, not that really matters, but it's a good channel. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. And of course, we kind of knew what was coming. I still have not seen it. I'm still contemplating if I should do a live watch show of that 40-minute hit piece. I could probably guess exactly what is going to happen, what it's going to be about. And just because I don't really have anything too much planned, if anybody does want to jump in here, I will drop the live stream link. And I figured I'd just, kind of recap, play a few, maybe a few little short clips like I just played there. But we do have some other channels too. I do have two backup channels. I have a David Crowley research channel, and then I have a David Crowley questions channel. So the David Crowley research is more of just the David Crowley story, and not really too much there. And then the David Crowley questions channel is kind of like the archives, kind of like a best of the stuff that we've done, because you know how many videos we have out there. And so if anybody does want to check out any of those other videos, and sometimes it's better, if especially if there's somebody new to the case, you may want to recommend them going to those two channels, because if they go to the gray stage, this channel that you're on here, if they come here, they may get lost. And I try to organize everything, and but the main thing, if they do come to this channel and you want to get somebody started, the David Crowley story videos is probably a good way to get them started here. And that's what I'm going to play a few of these clips as we go on, if I'm just going to sit here by myself for probably another hour. So I got the house all to myself here for an hour. Captain is at the deck here on the helm. Disassociated Soul, they pissed me off. They said the movie didn't exist. Interesting. Okay. And technically, I guess it didn't exist, right? I mean, the movie was never made. It was never finalized. The scripts were made. It was in the process of being made. And I'm sure they don't talk about that, right? So from what I hear, they do what we've seen a lot of other people do, a lot of other channels do, true crime type channels. They watch Eric Nelson's film, and that's really it. That's really it. I mean, do they look at all of the documents? Do they look at all of the research? No, because it takes time. That could take a lot of time. And those channels are, they're doing episodic shows. So they're not going to spend a lot of time researching it to take a real good deep dive into the Crowley case, unfortunately. And that's too bad. But you know what? I mean, and then I think about, okay, well, if they got this case wrong, how many of the other cases did they get wrong? But there's something very different, and I'm guessing there's something very different about this David Crowley case than there is about these other cases that they probably look at. A lot of them involve court, so they involve a ending, some type of an ending. So they involve the guy going to jail, being put on trial, et cetera, a confession tape, something like that. So you're not going to find any of that in this case, with this case. What you're going to find are just questions after questions after questions. And if my stream is buffering, please let me know, because it looks like it is starting to buffer. And last time that created some issues, but I can move my router if needed. Oh, it is buffering. Okay. I'm going to just move my router here for just a quick second. Disassociated says nope. Please expand on that if you don't mind. All right, let's see if that holds up. Looks like, okay, seems to be a little bit better. Oh, I miss these days going live and nothing works here, but that's all right. That is how it is. So I can turn this camera back on here. He says, Disassociated Soul says, no, they did not look at outside sources, conspiracy theories. Oh, interesting. Okay. So and why not? I mean, it's a conspiracy story, right? David Crowley was researching, quote unquote, conspiracies, but they're not going to look at it. That doesn't seem right to me. Buffering again. All right. Well, I was thinking about just playing the video, maybe playing some of it here, but I'm having such a good day. I don't know. I don't know if I want to ruin my day with that nonsense there, but it is to be expected, right? How often do we see it? How often are we going to continue to see just the same nonsense over and over? Just lost the whole thing there for a second. All right. Yeah, there it is. Things at work here. Awesome. Awesome to be here live. And this is what happens. At least this time I can see it. Blacking out, blanking out, but yep. I don't know. Okay, so it's going to continue on here, but maybe I will play it. Maybe I will play it. It keeps popping up. You know, if you search for David Crowley questions, David Crowley research, it'll probably pop right up, and you can watch. It's about a 40-minute show. About a 40-minute show, and it's just garbage. It really is. And so I got the stream up there if anybody wants to jump in here with video or audio. If you just want to do audio, you can do that too. Okay, let's jump in again. I'm going to see if I can move this router. Just move the router. It'll be all right. I mean, once this, let me turn this camera back on here. You can see the router is like right behind me too. So it's right there. Yeah, it's right there. So let me see. I'm just going to try it again. Tweaking out. I'm just going to roll with it. Oh, well. If it's going to buffer, it's going to buffer. Just going to have to deal with it. That's life. So, see, I'm going to play this 6-minute clip here and see if I can move this router, adjust it a little bit.
Blood spatter in the living room was mostly on the ground, according to BCA crime scene team Joe Cooksley. A black Springfield XD40 handgun, labeled as Item 1A, with a rubber hoe grip sleeve, was found cocked on the living room floor, several inches from David's left hand, according to Detective Tommy Booth. Detective Brian Bone was more specific, stating the gun was found approximately 1 foot to the south of the left side of David's body. According to the firearm worksheet, some apparent blood-like substance was found in the barrel of the gun. The worksheet also mentioned apparent rust-like material, which could have been found on one of 3 unspent cartridges in the gun. The presence of blood was found on the grip, Item 1A-1, the slide, Item 1A-2, the trigger, Item 1A-3, and the muzzle, Item 1A-4 of the gun. Item 1B is the magazine inside of the alleged murder weapon. Ridge detail blood found on the magazine was labeled as Item 1B-1. Several blood mixtures were found on the gun, specifically on the trigger, Item 1A-3, and the magazine, Item 1B-1. DNA results show blood of 2 or more individuals on the trigger, with one of those individuals being David Crowley. The blood did not match Kamel, but Rania could not be excluded as a possible contributor. 2 or more DNA profiles were found on the magazine. The major DNA profile on the magazine matched David Crowley. An estimated 99.9997% of the general population was excluded from being possible contributors, but Kamel and Rania could not be excluded. 2 cartridges were removed from the magazine and labeled as Item 1B1 and Item 1B2. Item 1C is an unspent cartridge found in the chamber of the handgun. Latent prints were not found on these three items. Item 1D is listed as a bore patch from item 1, and item 1E is listed as test-fired specimens from item 1. Hairs and fibers found on the gun and magazine were labeled as item 1A-5 and item 1B-2. Latent print results revolved around two of three latent prints suitable for comparison, one found on the gun and one found on the magazine. LP1A-1 is a latent palm print on the gun. According to latent print results, no known palm prints for David Crowley were submitted or found in the BCA files for comparison to the palm print on the gun. LP1B-2 is a latent fingerprint found on the magazine. However, this too could not be tied to David Crowley due to the limited quality and quantity of information in latent print. Jennifer Kostrowski consulted with Dennis Randall about this latent fingerprint. He agreed, Kostrowski wrote. It could be one or two prints, plus that LMP was unusual, coupled with low quality makes it difficult to determine. The crime scene team found a total of 6 empty spent cartridges, Detective Bone reported. The crime scene team also found 3 bullet fragments in the carpet. According to Detective, the BCA crime scene team processed the scene in detail. After the scene was processed, Bone continued, we were able to move the rug that the bodies were found on. These results did not include item 53, which rolled out of a living room carpet on January 20th, nor did they include item 57, which was found in the attic above the living room ceiling. The results of the laboratory firearms determined that item 1, which is David's gun, fired items 2, 3, 9, 30, 36, and 37, which was 6 Smith & Wesson 40 caliber cartridge cases, and items 42, 43, 44, 45, 53, and 57, which were 6 bullets. Comparative examinations of item 31, a bullet fragment, against test-fired bullets from item 1 and item 57 were performed with the following results. Item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features. This means that item 1 fired 31. Examinations of items 42, 43, 44, 45, 53, 57 showed them to be consistent with bullets from Winchester PXD-1 brand cartridges. Images of a test-fired cartridge case from item 1 were entered into the Minnesota Firearms Database. A search of the database failed to review any items that matched item 1. If future searches of the database reveal a potential match with item 1, your agency will be notified and further comparisons can be made. That's from the BCA 485 page document.
Good question there. Gina asks, random question, does the military take palm prints? Palm prints, I'm not sure. I know they do fingerprints. I don't believe they do palm prints. I could be wrong on that. The one thing about the prints, I think the big thing for me that always stood out is we were told that the FBI was not involved in this case. And I know it's streaming out, it's buffering out, but I'm going to continue on. Hopefully the audio is okay. That's the main thing. But so we were told that the FBI was not involved in this case. We were told that by the lead detective, Jim Gummert. Come to find out, how did the investigators get any prints to get any prints for David Crowley to match, to try to match all of these prints that you see on the gun, that you see on the house, that you see on the notepad, that you see everywhere, right? On the keyboard. The police get David's prints from the FBI. So the FBI were involved in this. Specifically, I believe an FBI special agent named Travis Yarborough. So once again, we're told one thing, and their own documents say something completely different. And that's the big thing for me. And so when you have places like Coffee House Crime, and if they're not looking at the documents, and I can't say for sure, sounds like Disassociated Soul would know. If they're not even looking at any of the documents, did they examine the 94 pages? Do they mention the 94-page police report? And if so, do they say that if you read those 94 pages, that's going to show that David Crowley is guilty? So the only thing that I know about the prints is the fingerprints. Palm prints aren't mentioned, but what is mentioned about palm prints, Gina, is that they did not, I believe, now you're jogging my memory, my old memory here, but I believe that they did not have a palm print to match um, the palm prints that they found at the crime scene. Regardless, whether they did or whether they didn't, they were not able to match any palm prints to David Crowley. And they were only able to match, I believe, one print, maybe two, to David Crowley. One was on the I believe on the inside of the magazine, in the inside of the gun, the magazine that was in the gun, and the other one was on the notepad found in the office bedroom, and they were able to match that to David Crowley's left middle finger. Here's my left middle finger. But I think you get the point there. So those are the things that I would expect from a show like Coffee House Crime. Hey, why didn't they look up? There was a bullet hole right there, right? They didn't see it. Some of those things that all of us have probably been asking for years. Those would be the things that I think would do very well on a show like Coffee House Crime. I mean, there's no reason for them to try to feel like they're going to be censored or anything. It's just probably laziness. Sounds like it. But again, Catherine was live streaming earlier today, and she was talking about this, and that is a great show. If you have not seen Catherine's live stream from maybe about an hour ago, maybe 2 hours ago, it's really, really good. So please make sure that you check that out, because she kind of talks a little bit about the Coffee House crime show, and I'm just really, really tempted to just stream it right now and play it, but I don't know. I'm in such a good mood here. I don't know if it's really something that I want to do. I've been going back and forth on it, so we will see. Don't know if I really have anything else. Now we got the one about the gun. The bullets are another big one here. It's about a 10-minute clip, but if you are just looking for things to show, somebody who's new to this case, and let me go back and kind of share this here. But this channel may be a good channel to get them started on. It mostly just has the David Crowley videos, just these short clips, 2 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes. That's where it started. At least the first 9 or first 10. I think you can probably show them those just to get them started on it. I think that may be a good starting point, especially if there's certain things that they're kind of curious about, right? If they're curious about the gun, they're curious about the bullets, whatever they're kind of focused on, or if they just want to get just a general overview. I have all of these clips in a 1 hour video titled the David Crowley story. That's kind of the part one for me, and then the last video on this channel that you'll find, except for this one that we're doing right now, is kind of like a part two to that just kind of covers the official theory, the official story, and how much garbage it is, just how ridiculous a lot of it is. So got that. But I know what I think the one thing that I've seen happen is every time one of these new hit pieces come out, we get the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group gets more members. You get one or two wackos that may pop up, that may reappear in some cases. But it does at least drive attention to this case. It does. I see it happening. So I can't. I mean, that's all that I can really say is it does. it has been helping the case, even though they get it wrong, because again, people do not like to be tricked. And when you trick people, and once they realize that, some of them can get really angry and really frustrated, thinking, hey, I thought this was something good. I thought you guys were doing something really good here, and then all of a sudden, you people don't like to be lied to, and that's what we've been seeing here. So at least there is that. At least it does kind of bring some awareness back to this case, which is always good. And it's going to continue to, because the simple questions still cannot be answered. Yeah, they can call David this, they can call him a killer, blah, 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 but they'll never have the evidence for it. They just won't. So all they can do is just keep spouting the same old thing. And my guess is that people probably went to the coffee house crime show and said, "Hey, you got to look at this case. You got to check this case out." That's my guess. Is that his fans and everything kind of went to him. So you got to check this out. I wonder how disappointed they are in that, in this 40-minute show that this guy did. I don't know. Disassociated Soul says, thank you for keeping this alive. I'm tired of people painting David as a controlling asshole. Someone said he had his wife basically locked in the house and wouldn't let her leave. And we know that that is not true. At least I don't believe that's true. There's evidence to the contrary. His wife is seen. She's also meeting with people. She's communicating with people through her phone up until the 23rd, I think. So I don't really believe that. And unless they were there, I don't know why anyone would say that. And we know that they were not there because they keep telling us that David wasn't letting anybody in the house. So they kind of want to have it both ways. Derek, hey, my friend, how are you? Afternoon to you too. Hope everything is good and life is well, man. Stay blessed, my friend. Stay blessed. Gina, I don't believe he did it. I think they were all murdered. He loved his wife and child. You can just tell. Yeah, yeah. And again, all that we're asking for is, okay, if he did it, there should be some evidence. There should be some proof. And if they don't have that, why would they just assume that he is guilty? And that's their right. If they just want to say, hey, you know what, I believe he is guilty, and then but to say that he is, and anyone who doesn't believe that, they're wackadoodles, they're crazy, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, that line, we've seen that script, and that script does not work on good people. It does not work on real people who really want to get to the truth. And I don't believe that there is any good person here that, if there was evidence that David Crowley did this, I don't believe that people would keep their eyes shut and say, okay, well, yeah, there's evidence that he did it, but I still want to think that he didn't. Maybe some would. But the problem is, because there is so much evidence that David did not do this, at this point, they have to counter that evidence. And so they don't even look at the evidence. They steer clear from it because they know they cannot counter it. And they don't understand it. And they don't choose to do the research needed in order to try to contradict the things that we have been saying here, that show David Crowley is innocent, why he's innocent, how he is innocent, based on their own documents, based on the police's documents, on the BCA documents. It's their research. We're just re-researching what they did. We're researching what the investigators put out there, right? And that's all that I can do. I can't go back in time. I can't look into some glass ball and see exactly what happened. But we can use our best judgment. We can use the documents that we have to formulate a cohesive story. And we're getting very close. I'm getting very close myself to actually coming up with a few theories. I'm not going to name names of who did what or anything, but I think there are some very viable, very credible theories that one could put together of exactly what happened, how it happened, and who did what without naming names. I believe that is possible. And I know a lot of people have done it and I have not. And I'm really considering that too, because that's kind of where I'm at now. I got nothing left, really, nothing new on this story. Um, Nothing that I can publicly state on this story at the very least. But maybe it is time to kind of go through and dig through some theories without naming names, but to say, okay, this is how it could have happened. This is how it most likely happened. Did somebody break in? Was somebody let in? Let's start there. Has to be one or the other, right? Either David let somebody in or somebody broke in. Could it have been more than one person? I don't believe there's any way that this could just be one person. I don't. Were they taken out of the house is another big one that keeps coming up over and over again. I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I think all of this did happen right there. 50-50, it was kind of a spur of the moment thing where someone or a few people who were in the house, and let's say there was a fight, some argument, a disagreement, or there were people that went there knowing exactly what they were going to do. This isn't nothing that you all have not known about. This is nothing that you haven't been talking about or thinking about probably for years, right? I just have not ever really publicly talked about this stuff. And maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. Let me see if I missed anyone. I'm trying to keep up with the chat here. Gina says, I don't believe he did it. I think they were all murdered. He loved his wife and child. You can just tell. Derek says, what did I miss? I came in late. What are we talking about? I don't know, Derek. I don't know what we're talking about, but if you want to jump on, I left the link in the stream. If anybody wants to jump on here, you don't have to show your face. If you just want to do audio, that's fine too. But the StreamYard link is in the chat. And if you don't see it, I can always drop it a second time here too. But kind of been talking about the coffee house crime thing, and I'm still going back and forth on it. I've talked with Crip Rick. We've been, I think he's seen it now. I still have not seen it. If I were to see it, I would see it just like this with all of you here live, and just kind of walk through it, pause, probably end up pausing every 30 seconds. So I don't know. I don't know if this is the best time or the best way to do this. And but that's what I've been thinking about. Those are the two main things I've been thinking about. Is it time to really start formulating publicly start formulating some ideas of exactly what happened, how it happened, and then you got to include the cover up too. He says, okay, never mind. I already knew what we're talking about. Yeah. Nothing you don't know already. Disassociated soul. That's how I feel, Gina. I don't believe he did it. Yep. Straight up David and family murdered. There it is. They're murdered. Derek also says, anybody that comes forward about any type of thing, it doesn't fit their narrative, or you don't want people to talk about it, are either suicided or an accident, straight up murdered. It definitely happens. We see that happening. And it won't be the first, won't be the last. But sometimes they leave trails. Sometimes they slip up, and they always get caught. They always leave something behind. There is no perfect murder, no perfect crime. There's always some trail that gets left behind, whether purposely or whether they accidentally do it. That's my view on it. Derek says, I'm good. I got laid. Oh, I'm sorry, man. Sorry to hear that. Trucking company is about to go on strike, and the company might go. That sucks, man. Yeah, this economy. I mean, I don't want to get off, and I save that stuff for my other channels. I'm sure people know my political views and stuff, but yeah, the country, we're in a lot of trouble. And sometimes when I look at what's happening with our country, the Paris riots, and what's happening overseas in other countries, and the wars, it does kind of take me back to this case here, and does make me wonder, man, what type of an influence would David have been if he was here? If he was here during COVID, can you imagine what type of movies, short movies, things that he could have made, would have been making? Because they would have said, you were right. You got this right. Now let's do something with it. Can you imagine if Gray State happened to come out around the same time in 2020? Would have been huge. Would have been really, really huge. It was just a accident that my book came out in December of 2019. right when really the COVID thing was still kind of being joked about. Comments were still being made, and drinking Corona beer, all that stuff before it really got serious about what the heck is going on here. And he was right on point about a lot of the censorship things, and what was happening in other countries of people being forced out of their home, the quarantines, et cetera, all that stuff, man. But can you just picture what type of movies, what type of things he would be involved in? And if Gray State would have came out in 2020, the impact, that it could have and would have and should have had. Mary says, I believe at least three people. Three people, I think is a very viable thing. Let me ask you this, Mary. Do you think David let three people in, or do you think three people forced their way in? I would say maybe David let one person in, maybe two people in, maybe, but would have to be somebody that David knew. He's not letting anybody in the house that he does not know or that is not scheduled to come over. And that's where the phone records really come into play, because there doesn't seem to be anything there of him getting any calls or anything like that. The whole internet history too is very troubling. All of that is very troubling because it's just silence. It's just black, dark silence. So, but we do know within the last month of David's life, people were popping up. They were popping up. So we know that that is possible. Gina says, me too. So three people. Okay, three people. And that's what you would need. You would need at least two, I think. I would think so. Derek says that theory was right. Like you said, if David let somebody in, it was obviously someone that he knew. Makes sense to me. Would have to be someone that David Crowley knew. These headphones are a little tight. Or my head is just too big. Mary says, I believe Kay went for the gun. She knew how to use it. Plus, her prints are on the gun safe. Excellent point. And of course, her DNA is all over that gun, right? And David's really isn't. Her blood. How does his blood get on the magazine inside of that gun? So things like that just kind of, I don't know. It's very, very baffling and very troubling. Very troubling. So, but it makes sense. She went. I definitely would agree with that. She went for the gun. She opened that safe. That's why the safe is left open the way that it is. Took the gun out. And then what though? Because you don't have a lot of you don't have any bullet, well, unless they miss more bullet holes, I guess. You don't have any bullet holes until we get into the living room. It's all tied into the living room and in the basement underneath the living room, and one in the ceiling above the living room. That's where all of these bullets are, and that's where the only holes are, up and down. So she must have gotten pretty far. So did they have some advance notice? Did David tell her, go get the gun? There's somebody in our backyard. There's somebody trying to break in. Did she hear a struggle between David and somebody else and decide to go get the gun and try to get whoever that person was to stop fighting with David? And does any of this explain why she is shot 3 times? Most likely 3 times. I mean, I believe three times. I can't prove 3 times. You have 3 bullets tied to her is the best evidence, and that's pretty much all that one would probably need. I think that's what a lot of people, for them, that's all that they need. For me, it's close enough, good enough. But again, not something that I can prove it because of what the autopsy shows is just 2. She was shot twice. So there's something wrong there. This is another thing the Coffee House Crime channel should have come up with. And maybe that's not their deal. Maybe that's not their thing. Well, then maybe this case is not right for that channel. Because the channel that should be covering this are the ones that are going to ask the questions and leave the door open and say, look, We don't know. We don't know, but these are the weird inconsistencies. These are the strange things. These are the reasons why we need to look deeper and see there's a good chance that this guy did not do it. Why this? Why that? Why that? Why was there this bullet hole in the ceiling? Why didn't it have David's DNA or David's blood on it, but it did have his DNA? Things like that. Um, they left the house without having all of those bullets. All of those things are what you would really expect from a good crime scene investigator. But even years later, whatever, 8 years later, 9 years later, you probably would want to see that from um, an independent investigator or researcher or whatever. But that's not what those shows are. A lot of these shows, that's not what they're there for. They're not there to solve the crime. They're not really there to even give you all of the facts, all the relevant stuff that you would need for it. And that's sad. Here's another one. Disassociated Man. If he had finished that movie, there's a motive, and there's a motive. Yep, there is a motive. Mary thinks David probably let one in. Let one in. Yep. And Mary also thinks that he died before she did, and that makes another. That brings up another great point, because Gina's asking the same thing. Did he die first? And so Gina, if you haven't checked out Catherine's show, she's done some really good shows on that, on the order of death, right? Not the Alex Jones movie, but who died first, why, based on the decomp rate, who died first, most likely. And Catherine, Sophia, and they had another girl. I think her name was Sarah. They did like a 2-hour show maybe on this, and kind of do go through that, where they think because of the marked autolysis, that it looks like David died first, and that they were probably only dead for about seven days at the very most, which is something that Dr. Leon Kelly also told Catherine way back in 2015, 2016, I believe. So, but this is why it's crazy, because if he died first, then obviously he's not the killer. And if the evidence shows that, then the investigators really need to look at that. And Catherine has tried to reach out to them, and they're not interested in it. So that is a big deal. That is, probably the biggest smoking gun here, because if you get the order of death, really, you really just need to show that David didn't die first. You get that, that's going to go a very long way. Um, let's see. Mary says if they grabbed Rania, she's not going to shoot. Yeah, I could see that. But then we got a hostage, a hostage situation, which is another very bad thing. And the brutality of it all too. And the 3 different crime scenes, almost. That's the way I still see it. You have a crime scene, one crime scene, and I guess they're all kind of tied, right? But you have 3 different areas of this house. 3 very strange, that almost look like 3 different setups, right? The one setup in the living room with the bodies laid out a certain way, the gun laid a certain way, Allahu Akbar written in blood. That's one. Then you have the laptop open in the on the kitchen island. That's 2, with the note, I have loved you all with all of my heart, which was written back in December 8th to 18th, December 19th. So the police know that really has no relevance there. But that's been made a big deal, as if David wrote that kind of after he killed him. That's the way that certain people have insinuated that happened, when that message really had nothing to do with any of this, because of when it was written, and it was edited later, or at least open and edited. Catherine's channel, let me pull that up for you. I'll drop it in the chat room right now. She was just live, and I added a few clips of that to my last video. But let me pull up her channel here for you, and can go. Okay. Yes, this is her channel right here. Make sure that you go over there because she has a lot of good stuff on there. Her and Sophia have been doing a lot of research focusing on that, focusing on who died first and why. What do the medical examiner documents show? How do they show based on the decomp, et cetera, who died first? Some really great stuff there. Iconic Meerkat, how are you? Wearing your Bullet Exchange t-shirt again. You're doing an honorable pursuit. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Yes, because that's what I was going to do, and that's what I'll be doing after this. There is a big wrestling tournament going on for the next 30 days. The G1. So for the New Japan Pro Wrestling, it is a big deal. That's why I got this shirt on here. Probably looks like I wear the same shirt every time. Disassociated Soul. This case was definitely not for them. This is a highly complicated situation. Absolutely. And if someone outright denies the government involvement, then they're not asking the right questions, just a smear campaign. That's right. And that's usually not what you would get from the Coffee House Crime Channel. At least that was my take on it. But the cases that he's covered, I don't know those people personally either. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that. But this is one of those cases where it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I want people to cover it. I want those big channels to cover it, but they don't have the time to go through it, or they don't have the knowledge, or they just, I don't know why, but they just never talk about the stuff that we talk about here. And this is the main stuff to talk about. Why even do the show if you're just going to repeat what all these other people have been saying, and just call David a killer and a murderer who snapped and went crazy, right? Why even do that? You're just going to do the same thing, cover the same story in the same way. And maybe that is the plan. Maybe that's just how it is, and that's safe for them. It's safe for them not to question all of this stuff. And on the other hand, maybe they simply do not know, because they have not done the research. They've never heard of this channel. They've never heard of Catherine's channel. They've never heard of the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group, even though if they've watched Eric Nelson's film, they should at least know a little bit about that on the other side, what the flip side is. At the very least, they should know a little bit about that and say, hey, there is another side, right? So at least clown us and say, you have these conspiracy guys, conspiracy gals who are just crazy and have no idea what they're talking about, right? Do they say that? Do they even mention that? Because it's hard for them to do that without actually doing the research and looking into what we have done, reading my free 200-page book, right? And they're not going to do that. They should. I wish that they would. And if they really cared about true crime mysteries, they probably would. They would take that time. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a free PDF that you can download. If you just go to thegraystage.com, it's all right there. You can download it free. But maybe they don't want to do that. I mean, how curious, how deep do they really dive into true crime if they can't do something like that? So I'm very curious to see what type of research the Coffee House Crime did. So let me see if there's anything else. One more here. I believe Kamel was the primary target. Seems like a rage killing. I mean, 3 bullets just for her. David must have been killed first. He would not let the perps do that to his wife and child. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. And just it's all nuts. I'll keep the stream going here for just a few more minutes. I'm going to play this. I think the Wi-Fi issue finally got resolved. So I'm going to play this here. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but I'll be here in the chat. The bullets. Based on the firearms report completed May 22nd, 2015, the gun, item 1A, fired 6 cartridge casings
and 6 bullets. Item 2 is a cartridge casing found at the corner of the east edge of the carpet near the recliner. Item 3 is a cartridge casing found on the east side of the living room hardwood floor next to a short wooden stool. Item 9 is a cartridge casing found on the south side of the living room carpet. Item 30 is a cartridge casing found on the living room hardwood floor closest to the south wall. Item 36 is a cartridge casing found inches from David's left hand on the south end of the living room carpet. Item 37 is a cartridge casing found on the west side of the living room carpet next to the couch. The spent cartridges found on the west side of the living room carpet on January 17, 2015 are labeled as Item 42, Item 43, and Item 44. All 3 spent cartridges were found close to the living room couch with hair on them. Test results for all 3 items showed a single source DNA profile matching Kamel while excluding Rania and David as possible contributors. Item 42 weighed 167.96 grams, contained a blood-like and hair-like substance with expanded damage to the nose of the spent cartridge. Item 43 weighed 179.56 grams and also had a blood-like substance but no hair. The nose of the spent cartridge was damaged and partially exposed. A blood-like substance was also observed on item 44. This spent cartridge weighed 130.24 grams, with its nose listed as damaged. Item 45 is a spent cartridge found in the south wall of the basement. This spent cartridge weighed 173.90 grams. The nose was listed as damaged and partially expanded. Holes were observed in both the area rug and the wood floor underneath the rug, Joe Cooksley reported. Chemical testing of the hole in the wood floor also failed to detect the presence of lead. This bullet traveled into the living room carpet, pierced through the hardwood floor, leaving behind bullet fragments, and then lodged itself into the south wall of the basement. A section of the drywall around the lodged bullet was cut in order to retrieve item 45. When the styrofoam behind the drywall was removed, a bullet was observed, according to Joe Cooksley. A DNA profile was not found on item 45. Additionally, Joe Cooksley discussed running trajectory tests on the spent cartridge with BCA specialist Chris Olson. He didn't feel it was necessary, Cooksley wrote in his notes. It should be noted here that 2 spent cartridges labeled as item 53 and 57 were found by accident on 2 separate occasions, days and weeks after the bodies were removed from the house. The others. Item 31 is labeled as a bullet fragment found near the south edge of the living room carpet. Item 7 is the unspent round compressed into the living room carpet. Several thin hairs covered the live round. Strands of hair and pieces of flesh were found close to this bullet. DNA tests were never performed on item 7. According to BCA forensic scientist Rebecca Aldian, BCA crime scene team Joe Cooksley indicated that analysis is not needed on item 7. Once the processing of the crime scene was completed between January 17th and 18th, investigators left the house with 4 spent cartridges instead of 6. Of the 4 bullets recovered from the scene, only 3 had blood on them, only Kamel's blood. Authorities missed 2 bullets when they left the house on January 18th. Those 2 bullets will be covered in detail on January 20th. Just going to stop that for a second. For Mary here, Mary asks, Greg, wasn't there blood droplets possibly in or near the dishwasher that weren't on any of the family members? I don't think they were tested. I don't think those blood droplets were even tested. So they don't know whose they were, right? But those blood droplets should not be there. The blood shouldn't even be there, right? Why is it even there? How does it get there?
So that, and they know that it's there and why they didn't test it. But again, I can criticize them for not testing those little blood droplets, but the bigger criticism is probably why didn't they test the blood that was on the recliner in the living room too, right? I mean, it's the biggest blood stain in the whole freaking house, if you don't count the carpet. Um, but and they don't test that. So it's a great question. It's a great question, Mary. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's my understanding is they did not even test it. And I'm curious, and I'm sure you are too, what they would have found, because if it's not David's blood, then they got another problem. They got a big, big problem there. So they submit all of these swabs, but who is telling them what to test, right? Is there somebody telling the BCA crime scene lab, you don't need to test these one, you don't need to test them all, right? Just test the big ones, save our budget. Yeah, there's a 5-year-old child dead, but fuck it, we're not going to spend a lot of time and money on it. And that kind of seems like what they did. And the more that we learned about this case, that's exactly what they did. They just said fuck it all, and we're not going to really do a real serious investigation, because we're just going to act like a bunch of Iconic Meerkat says no indications of a major fight. Take out any threats, David, and there was nothing to stop their evil plan. I heard there was someone with an unhealthy lust for Kamel. I've heard that too. Funny how that gets around. Yeah, I've heard the same thing. Hide and Seek. Hi, everyone from Manchester, UK. Cheers, Hide and Seek. Keep those tea and crumpets moving. Don't know what you have out there, but we got some good Sunday wine here. Cheers to all people in the UK and everywhere. I think most of the people are here are probably from the USA, I'm guessing. But looking at the podcast numbers, it's pretty crazy. The reach that the Gray Stage podcast has, and just curious people from all over this great planet. Pretty interesting to me. And I think UK is probably second. And Canada maybe third. But some of the other countries, Pakistan is one of them, and it's just crazy. I was just like, I don't even know what to say, how this story gets out there, but it definitely does. I don't know, how do they translate it too? They must have somebody translating this stuff, because I don't speak those languages, so that's pretty interesting. Let's see. Greg, you are correct. Well, hopefully I got one thing right. We'll see. So it's a crazy thing, Mary. Sometimes I'll end up being fact checked by my own book, which is fine, man. I don't care. I mean, I'm gonna get things wrong, but whatever the truth is, that's what matters. I may ask some very dumb questions. I may ask the same thing over and over and over, but I don't care. I really don't care. The main thing here is to keep the case going, and I've always felt that calling. I've always felt like God is, God. I don't think God picked me to solve the case at all, but I do think God wants me to keep looking into it, and also more than looking into it at this point, because I feel like I've kind of gone as far as I can go with it. For now, I feel like there's a few doors, there's a few things that I'm waiting for to be open, and maybe I can walk through those doors too. But the main thing is so that the case does not die, and it does not die, and we don't just get the coffee house crime take on the David Crowley case, that we get the other side, the real side, the truthful side, the real investigators, the real researchers that are really looking into this, and that are not afraid to call out the investigators for just some of the things that they did wrong, or some of the things that they did not do. Nothing wrong with that. And to keep the crazies away, right? Because the crazies love to pop up every now and then, and just remind you that the crazies are still out there. They're out there. I've seen them. They're out there. I'm sure you have too. Hide and Seek says they couldn't be bothered. Open and shut case, much easier for them. Yep. Yeah, and that seems to be the go-to. And I was shocked when I learned that. And I remember talking with Dan Hannon about this. I'm like, because me and Dan Hannon would look at, we look into a lot of different cases, and there was just murder, there's suicide, or murder. And it's like, why do the police just jump to, okay, well, if we can't prove that it's murder, then it's a suicide. If you can't prove it's a suicide, then you don't know. I mean, why say that it's murder or a suicide? Just say you don't know, and they can't do that, and that's sad, because then that's where the false information comes in, and that's where you realize, well, then it's not about truth. Okay, if you're going to be honest, say you don't know what happened. That is the truth. They don't know what happened. Unless they were there, the authorities do not know what happened. That is the truth. So when you hear, maybe I'll play that clip, but when you hear the lead, the chief, and you hear them talk about, we believe, I don't care what you believe. What do you know, and what can you prove? And that's why they can never say, yeah, we can prove David Crowley did this, because they can't. But saying we believe this, then people say, well, I want to believe that the police are good. I do too. And I believe that most police are good, right? I don't believe police are running around shooting people and killing people. That's just not what that's not what I think. And I grew up in the Bay Area. Let's see. Okay. So Gina's asking who. I don't see, when you get into naming names, right, unless you really know. But I think what Gina is asking, Iconic Meerkat, is just who Gina's asking who was the person that you heard, not that you know of, but the person that you heard had an unhealthy lust for Camille. And what factual data is it based on? I'll let you take that one. But not David's brother. Not as far as I know, anyways. I mean, that's not one that I've heard. I've heard others, but your guess is as good as mine. And remember, we don't want to accuse people the same way that they accused David either, right? So can't have it both ways. We can't be running around saying, well, you can't accuse David of this, and then we go and run around and accuse people of things too. Not of murder, hopefully not of murder, but that's why I've always been very, very cautious about that, because do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, right? And if you've ever in your life been falsely accused, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, prove that you didn't murder somebody. Well, how do I prove I didn't murder somebody? Because you can't prove that I did. That's really it. So you got to bring it back to them. That's really about it. Mary says, I keep looking into it because it needs our eyes and thoughts. Yeah, and it's very, very layered. And Gina agrees with that. And Hide and Seek says you can't argue with the facts. Can't argue with the facts. I understand if you can't say. Yeah, I mean, I could guess, and I could speculate, but and I've heard theories and stuff like that, but I don't really know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. But to lust after somebody else's wife is never a good thing. So if anybody was doing that at all, shame on you for that. Shame on you for that. And if you put it in text messages that may be publicly available out there, shame on you for that too. Okay. In 2015, Biotech Emergency Services, the company hired to clean the crime scene, was in the process of removing items from the residence when a mushroom bullet, item 53, rolled out of the living room carpet. This spent cartridge has some white material on the surface, weighed 169.54 grams, and was found with an expanded nose. It should be noted, according to Detective Bone, that the bullet was predominantly flat on the back and was sitting on the front mushroom portion of the bullet. The bullet appeared to be mostly intact at the time of our discovering it. Item 53-1 is a swabbing of item 53. Hairs found on the bullet were labeled as item 53-2. This bullet contained a blood mixture of 2 or more individuals, with the major DNA profile matching Rania. Interestingly,
David and Kamel were excluded from being contributors to the newly found bullet. Based on those results, authorities should have been looking for a second DNA profile. Unlike some other results, it is not stated that 99% of the general population can be excluded from contributing to the blood mixture of item 53. Since authorities did not discover the spent round on their own, we will never know where item 53 landed after allegedly killing Rania Crowley. What we know for sure is that item 53 rolled out of the living room carpet on January 20th, 2015. What we still need to know is the source of the missing DNA profile or profiles associated with this bullet. Item 57. On February 17, 2015, investigators were notified about a bullet hole in the living room ceiling. Based on that information, authorities returned to the Crowley residence on February 18th and found a bullet, item 57, in the attic above the living room. The bullet weighed 180.18 grams and is the heaviest of all 6 spent rounds. Like item 45 and item 53, white material was also observed on this spent cartridge. The nose of the bullet was partially expanded. Characteristics of the hole, BCA crime scene lead Joe Cooksley wrote in his report, and its surrounding area indicated that a projectile was traveling generally west to east as it entered the ceiling and exited in the attic. After examining the bullet in the living room ceiling, authorities found item 57 in the attic above the living room near the front door. There was no blood on this bullet, but the nuclear DNA profile matched David Crowley. The DNA profile did not match Kamel or Rania. An email exchange between BCA analyst Catherine Roach and Detective Tommy Booth stated that no one had been charged with committing a double murder-suicide. "Good morning, Catherine," Detective Booth wrote on February 17, 2015 at 8:04 a.m. "Nobody has been charged in this case, so I'm giving you permission to use up some evidence in its entirety for DNA analysis. If you need anything else, please feel free to contact me. Thanks for all your hard work." Attempting to connect item 57 to the alleged murder weapon, authorities compared the bullet recovered to a bullet fragment found in the living room labeled as item 31. Originally, the bullet fragment labeled item 31 was not included in the firearms examinations. I spoke with Joe Cooksley, BCA analyst Lisa Kinsella wrote on April 14, 2015 at 10:14 a.m. regarding item 31 labeled as bullet fragment or fragments. It isn't included in the FA assignment. We discussed that I will add item 31 to the FA assignment to document it and examine it for suitability comparative exams. The bullet fragment labeled item 31 weighed 19.14 grams. The fragment was noted to have a hair-like substance and a torn jacket. The fragment was compared to items 42, 44, 45, 53, and 57, but not to item 43. According to the BCA firearms report, item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features. This means item 1 fired item 31. I'm not sure how that connects item 57 to the gun, but you can look at the laboratory results here. Since item 57 against item 31 showed the presence of matching features, this means that item 1 fired item 31.
That's what they say. That's what they believe, and that's what they want us to believe too. And you can see it's just kind of like, well, they're trying to connect dots, right? They're trying to connect letters that try and connect letter A to letter F, and to make that connection is there's just a lot of other things that they just try to assume or insinuate, or they're just grasping at straws. They're not really giving you point A, point B, point C, point D, boom, done. This is why he did it. This is how he did it. I mean, as you can see, they're having a hard time with these bullets. And that is what the documents show. So when people say, look at the documents, it shows David guilty, that's not true. If you look at the documents, look at the bullets, it shows they do not know if item 57, they cannot prove item 57 was fired by that gun. They do their best guess, but that doesn't make it true. That doesn't mean that it is fact. It's another we believe. And when you top off the we believes on top of other we believes, we believe, pretty soon it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. Then people just don't even want to hear it. All right, fine. Believe what you want. That's not what we were asking for. We were asking, what proves David Crowley guilty? That's what we were asking, not what you believe. But anyways, they can believe whatever they want. Mary says here, item 53 is source of unknown blood along with Ronnie's blood. Item 53 and 45 are a little suspicious, right? And they're very similar, right? And we know that item 45 didn't hit any person, yet it went through hardwood floor, and look at the damage that it did. And then you compare that to item 57, and it looks kind of similar. Item 53 is definitely another strange one here because you have the unknown DNA, right? You have somebody else's DNA on there. I don't know if it's specifically blood or DNA, but I don't know if it's specifically blood. I think I may have misquoted, may have got that wrong. There's a few times in the book where I say blood when I should have actually said DNA. But because sometimes, obviously, when we look at item 57, you can see they have David's DNA, not his blood on there. But they're very specific to say they didn't find blood on item 57. They're not so specific with other things, other places with blood and DNA. Beyond the point, way beyond the point. But yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it is DNA too. I definitely believe that's what the document says there. Okay. So with that, the DNA, this missing DNA, it's found at least two separate places here. Who is that source? Where's the source of that DNA? And it's interesting that you just have one, right? Actually, no, because they do say two or more, and then they would take out two of the three people that were killed in the house. So two or more, could be two people's DNA in there, could be three, right? But it's at least one other person's DNA, get at the very, very least. So that's kind of where, yeah, very interesting stuff there. I may play a little bit of this here because I was talking about the investigators, but feel free to stop me anytime. It seems like every time I start playing a video, then the stream starts buffering. It's like all a conspiracy, all a conspiracy.
This is the ideal family, seemingly, and everything went terribly wrong.
We may never know what made David Crowley finally snap. Certainly the conspiracy theorists will fill in some of those gaps.
10 things that prove David Crowley is innocent.
He just lost his way, financially lost his way, life, stress.
David's blood is not on any bullets. His DNA is only on one, item 57. Police could not find a motive. David was planning for the future. David had a working deal with Michael Entertainment Group to turn Gray State into a TV series.
We didn't fire David or we didn't get rid of David, however that went, and he didn't walk away from us. I mean, there was never any of that.
David was wounded as evidenced by the blood on the magazine. the lack of David's prints at the crime scene. There is no evidence David committed suicide.
Well, a poet once said, the purest products of America go crazy. And David Crowley went crazy, and David Crowley documented his own life and did it in such a way that makes me feel he knew that there was an ultimate end use for the thing.
This is a person that was not thinking clearly, committed a horrible act by taking those lives. And his mind at that point was deranged. He just was not in a normal state. He wasn't thinking rationally.
It almost embodied him, almost to the extent of where it would dictate a lot of his thoughts and his ideas and his, I guess, outlook in reality.
He looked like he literally was eat, sleeping, and breathing on his computer. Failure was not an option for him.
As you sit here today, a year later, do you have an idea of what those final moments look like?
It was horrifying. You have a tragic loss of an entire family. It looks like David snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter, and then ultimately himself. And it was a very sad scene. You know, during the holidays, a beautiful family, and just tragically lost.
The rear slider was open 1/4 inch.
4933 rear slider is unlocked, slightly ajar.
Copy, rear slider unlocked, slightly ajar.
The initial reports here was that it was a murder-suicide. I have heard reports that some investigators may be calling this suspicious at this point.
Yeah, I love this
that
part.
may just be, people hoping that it's suspicious. But I'm hearing that it may be suspicious. And I also have heard that there is reports of a sliding door that was left unlocked. I don't know how much you can say about the investigation. I know you're following it closely. What can you tell us about that?
The only thing I can confirm on right now is obviously the investigation's ongoing. I haven't seen the reports about it being suspicious on it. Until we get the full amounts, the full actual report from the police and what they've come to it,
This is one thing that I love, because they kept going back to the same thing. Well, the investigation is ongoing. The investigation was ongoing up until October of 2015. That did not stop these Gray State goons from trying to shove down our throats, to push, to bully us into thinking David Crowley was guilty days after the bodies were found. We're talking by January 21st, there is a complete smear campaign by people within the Gray State goon team to try to convince anyone looking into this or questioning it that David Crowley did this. But then you have this guy here, Danny August Mason, saying, well, the investigation is ongoing. So the investigation is ongoing when it's things he doesn't want to talk about. When there's things that they don't want to talk about, the investigation is ongoing. But when there's points that they want to shove down your throat, then it's different, right? Then it's okay, this is fact, right? And they try to play these things off as facts. So that was the main reason for me for putting that in there.
and I haven't really, and from what we're
who's he
getting
looking
from,
at?
like I said, from communication with the family and from some other individuals I'm not going to name,
Who's he looking at?
kind of coming forth with their own story. I'm just gonna probably just stick to it as what the examiner said, as it being a suicide at this point right now.
Anyone could have entered or exited without forced entry. Let me ask something. Does anyone here think, what are your thoughts on the rear slider? We know the rear slider was left open. Do you think when the murders took place that the rear slider was open, or do you think it was left open after the murders, if that makes sense, right? So I've kind of struggled with that and wondered, well, Was it always open? Was the rear slider always open from the time that these murders, that these killings happened? Or was it only opened at the very end with the killer or killers leaving the residence, leaving David Crowley's home? Curious to hear anybody's thought on that. And if I'll probably end the stream very soon, so if you're not watching this live, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on that.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
He did it. I mean, there's no denying it.
In her blood.
Yes.
Why did he do that?
See, the thing is, they don't know. See, they keep saying, and you have Mason Hendricks saying he did it. They don't know that he did it. No one can prove that David Crowley wrote Allahu Akbar on that wall. David's DNA is not on that wall. His latent fingerprints are not on that wall. How can they say he did it? They do not know that he did it. Why do they want to believe so badly, so desperately, that David Crowley wrote Allahu Akbar on that wall? And why are they going publicly with it? It's one thing to say, I think he did. But to say I know he did is complete nonsense. It is a lie. And there you have Mason Hendricks telling a lie. He does not know. He says there's no denying it. No, of course there is. You would deny it because you cannot put David's DNA on that wall. So we don't know if David did that, right? I want to stay open to it, but don't tell me that he did it and there's no denying it. And then you have the police chief saying the exact same thing. These guys are reading from the same script. It's craziness. It's craziness. Okay. I am probably going to end this. Just do one more here. I think it was left open afterwards. If it was open, gunshots would have been heard. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because obviously you cannot close the rear slider from the outside, right? Yeah, I think there is a lock, so maybe they could have. But then I've heard, well, it was busted. Then we have some of the Gray State goons saying that there was a blocker. There was something that would have stopped the rear slider from opening. We know that isn't true. So all of these false stories, all these fake stories, and then these Gray State goons wonder why people are questioning their credibility with this. And why are you guys pushing so hard that David Crowley is guilty when the facts are not on your side? It doesn't make any sense. You're making yourself look very foolish, very foolish. And that is why there's so much backlash against those Gray State goons, because the truth is not on their side, and they act like they know what they're talking about, and they don't. The facts show that they do not. And they don't go back on these things that they're saying. Why are they pushing this false theory that David Crowley did it, knowing that there is clear evidence to show that he didn't? Now, back then in 2015, Mason Hendricks had assumed that I had gotten all of the data that he had. I don't believe that I did. He had a lot of data. I believe that he had more data than what I had back in 2015. The question for me would be, the information that we have today, does Mason Hendricks have that same information? And if so, when did he get it? And if not, maybe he'll be open to changing his mind and admitting that he was wrong on a lot of these things. A lot. Talking about bloody footprints all over the house and weird comments like that he's made, that are factually made. Like, he can't deny that he's made these comments here. We have the evidence that he did. So it's craziness for these guys. Iconic Meerkat says, who leaves a door ajar in January when their thermostat set to 68? Makes no sense. That's right. And I think that's a great place to stop this here. So again, we will come back most likely in September, maybe October, and the Gray Stage podcast will be back. We will do a very special show. We will continue on with this book, and probably once we read through the whole book, that will probably end the podcast, but it won't end shows just like this. Or maybe we take the podcast into a season 2 in a different direction. I'm not sure yet, but God bless you all. Thank you all for caring about this case and for doing whatever you can to help keep this case going. And we will be back. And, oh, don't forget to check out Catherine's channel. The link is in the chat. And make sure that you go over there and check out her channel, because she may be putting out more videos between now and September than I will be. But God bless you all. Really appreciate it.